Okay, good evening everyone. We are going to do a relevant topic to the Zman Hashana as we prepare for the Yom Tov of Sukkot. Haba Aleinu L'Tova. Haba Aleinu L'Tova. We're going to talk about Shemini Atzeres. It's actually, that alone is a nest that this comes up in the Sugya, and the way it comes up is also very, very interesting. Okay, really interesting. It's a major element of the Ran on Mem Testament Aleph. The Gemara brought a machlekes that if you're noider from Mevushal, the Tana of the Mishnah says mutter b'tzli. Rabbi Yoshia says aser b'tzli. Why aser b'tzli? Because we have a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim vayivashu es haPesach ba'esh kamishpat. They cooked the Pesach in fire, as is the law. Fine. What's the machlekes? Is the machlekes whether we're hoylech achar lashon bnei adam or we're hoylech achar lashon haTorah? No. The lashon is, are we hoylech achar lashon bnei adam? And they lived in different communities, so each one followed the way that they spoke in their respective communities. Okay, that we know already. We saw that in the Ran. Meaning, according to the Bavli, everybody agrees halchen lachar lashon bnei adam. However, the Ran brings a Yushalmi, an unbelievable Yushalmi. It's the one part of the Ran which is not the legislated Ran for Daf HaShavua. The Ran, 2 lines down from where the Gemara begins, Yushalmi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, holchu b'nedarim achar lashon bnei adam. Rav Oshia, no, holchu b'nedarim achar lashon Torah. Not like the Bavli. The Bavli's conclusion is they don't argue about this. The Yushalmi's conclusion is they do argue about this. In fact, the Yushalmi, ma nafik beinein. What would the nafkamina be if you follow the Lashon HaTorah or you follow Lashon Bnei Adam? Says the Yushalmi, the nafkamina is Amar koinam yayin she'inin toyim b'chag. Let's say a person says, I won't have wine on Chag. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it's aser on the last day of Shemini Atzeres, because people call Shemini Atzeres a Chag. Al-daite Rabbi Yoshia mutter. According to Rabbi Yoshia, it would be mutter because the Torah does not call Shemini Atzeres a Chag. Says Gemara, Av Rabbi Yoshia Moeder Shuasar. The Yushalmi says no. In the end, even Rabbi Yoshia would say it's Asar. Loi Amar Rabbi Yoshia Ella Lechumrin Adkan. Rabbi Yoshia only said it Lechumra, but not Lahakel. Rabbi Yoshia only said we follow the Lashon HaTorah Lechumra, but not Lekula. So just because the Torah doesn't call Shemini Atzeres a Chag, Rabbi Yoshia never said his Svara le kula only lechumra. The conclusion then is ad kan ulefun Gemara dilan. According to our Gemara, everybody agrees that fil Rabbi Yoshia moida de ein halchem adam ela achar lashon bnei adam. Of course, so according to the Bavli, that we only go by lashon bnei adam. Shemina de bein lach bein lachmer omer b'chag yom tov achron shel chag b'chlal. According to the Bavli, where everybody follows Lashon B'nei Adam, and people call Shemini Atzeres a Chag, if somebody would aser Yayin on the Chag, Shemini Atzeres would be aser. According to the Yushalmi, that it's a machlokes whether we follow Lashon B'nei Adam or Lashon Hakra, then if we follow Lashon Hakra, then Shemini Atzeres would be mutter. But what do we see from here? That people refer to Shemini Atzeres as a Chag. However, the Torah does not refer to Shemini Atzeres as a Chag, and that is going to be the subject of today's Shiur. The Yushalmi in Nedarim that says nowhere in the Chumash is Shemini Atzeres called a Chag. So this is not even a stretch. This is literally the main topic on Daf Mem Tes is Shemini Atzeres called a Chag in the Chumash. You may remember from our shiurim. It's even in the book of Mystery and Majesty from the Ramami Pano that the reason Shemini Atzeres is not called a Chag because Chag means a circle, and all the Yomim Tovim revolve around a mitzvah. Rosh Hashanah revolves around shofar, Yom Kippur revolves around fasting, on Pesach revolves around matzah. There is no mitzvah that we do on Shemini Atzeres, and therefore it's not called a Chag. In fact, Rama Mipano says that all the Yomim Tovim revolve around Shemini Atzeres. So that's what we're going to explore today from a halachic perspective. Is Shemini Atzeres a Chag? And the conclusion is going to be not like the Yushalmi, that it is. Okay? Bottom line is, you could say Chag in the davening, but let's begin to explore this. Let me try to bring it up. Okay. So this was the Ran. I just read the Ran here. So let's look in the halacha. Simen Taf Reish Samach Ches. Leil Shemini Omer Betfila Vatiten Lanu Hashem Elokeinu B'Ahava Es Yom Shemini Chag HaAtzeres Hazeh. Or I say Es Yom Hashmini Chag HaAtzeres Hazeh. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. The 8th day, Chag HaAtzeres. Comes the Rama, and the Rama says, no. Hagav anu noyagin arminagish she'ein oimrim Chag b'Shmini. Toloi matzinu b'shamakom shenikra Chag. We don't find anywhere that Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. Ela oimrim Yom Shemini HaAtzeres. We say Yom Shemini HaAtzeres. You hear this Rama? What an unbelievable Rama. If you came on today, on the busiest day of the year, in the middle of the day, to hear this, because Hashem is so happy, He wanted you to have the simcha of learning this Rama. That, what does Rama say? The minhag of Ashkenazim is we do not say Chag on Shemini Atzeres. We don't find b'shum makom, nowhere, that Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. Rather, it's called Yom HaAtzeres. Now that's a very bold statement. Any time an Achron is going to say, we don't find b'shum makom, you could bet your bottom dollar that someone's going to try to show where we do find a place that Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. So the Taz, look in the Taz, the Magen David over here. V'yardei sun reish chav siv chav hevesi rai mi perek elu ne'amaran daf memalav sheshmi Atzeres kari Chag midamrinon v'i kasav b'Chag HaSukkos. If it would have just said Chag HaSukkos, hava amina afilu b'yom tov ha'achrain kas rachmana b'voi kol Yisrael. The Gemara in Saita says if it would have just said Chag HaSukkos, I would have thought it means even the 8th day. What do you mean? Why would I have thought it means even the 8th day? But the 8th day is not called a Chag. Shema mina di lav bevoi hava mina sheyam tov achron sheshmi says kari Chag. So number one, the Ramah says we don't find anywhere that Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. Yeah, it's Mavur and Saita that the words Chag HaSukkos could refer to Shemini Atzeres. Furthermore, the Taz says, "V'chol makam kareli amachron shasukas yom tov ha'achron." We always call the last day of Sukkot Yom Tov Ha'achron. From the Gemara in Sukkah that says that Shemini Atzeres is distinct regarding Pazer Kasev. So we see, had it not been for that, it's one Chag. Just like Chag HaMatzos is all 7 days. Why is the rest of Pesach called Chag HaMatzos? Why don't we call it, there's no Chiyuv to eat Matzah. It should be called Chag Isser Pesach. Everything is Nigrar Achar Chag HaRishayna. So too, the 8 days of Chag. So if you say, I answer myself B'Chag, which is Chag HaSukkos, you're usher even on Shemini Atzeres. The bottom line is the Taz says that for sure Shemini Atzeres is definitely called Chag. Furthermore, v'al pi hadvarim ha'ela sheshmini atzeres nichla b'toich hachag v'nigar acharav yesh lanu loymar es yoim shmini ha'atzeres chag hazeh. Meaning you say yoim hashmini yoim shmini ha'atzeres chag hazeh. Devada yin loymar chag shmini atzeres. You're definitely not going to say the Yom Tov of Shemini Atzeres. We need to show it's not a Yom Tov by itself. Ela machmas Chag HaSukkos. Ela nikri Atzeres shel Chag. It's the Atzeres of Chag. Shemini hu Atzeres Chag. Ki'ilu oimer tafel lechag. As if it's secondary to the Chag. V'chein hu b'piyut marav shel simchas Torah. B'zeh Atzeres Chag ha'oisef. In any event, the Taz argues on the Rema. He says, Rema, really? It's not called a Chag? But the Gemara says, had it not been for Bevoy, the drasha of Bevoy, I would have said Chag HaSukkos is referring to Shemini Atzeres. So we see it is called a Chag. Furthermore, the Gra says, that which Rama says, Loi matzinu, Besukah daf memches, we say, Yom Tov ha'achroin shel Chag. We always say the last day of Chag. V'chein b'harbe mekoymos. V'amrinon be'erchen, u'v'soif tainus shmoina yemei hachag. So we see Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. Also, there's a Rabbi Kiva Eger. When Rabbi Kiva Eger brings the Rama, Dulai Matzinu B'Shamakayim, now the truth is, the Rama is very firmly established. You know why the Rama is firmly established? Because the Rama is based on the Yerushalmi. And the Yerushalmi says that if you make a neder to aser meat on the Chag, then Shemini Atzeres would be mutter according to the opinion that we go after Lashon Hakra. And the Yerushalmi that the Ran quotes, that we saw the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, Al daite de Rabbi Yoshia mutter, because we don't find in the pasuk that it's called a Chag. However, so basically any question you're going to have on the Rama is really a question on the Yerushalmi, because the Rama who says we don't find anywhere that Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag, the Rama points out that the Yerushalmi holds that way. However, if you look in Rabbi Kiva Eger, he says, look in the Radak on Hosea, Perek Beis, Pasuk Yud Gimel, what the Radak brings from Reb Sadia Goin. So this is fascinating. If you look in Hosea, it says, V'hishbati kol mesoisa, I will cause to cease all of her joy, Chaga, her Chag, Chodsha, her Rosh Chodesh, V'shabata, her Shabbos, V'chol moyada. So there are two categories, there's Chag and Moyed. And if you look in Rav Sadia Goin says, Perish Chaga, Shalosh Regalim, Moyada, Shmini Atzeres. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, this is a Raya Atzuma to the Rama, that Shmini Atzeres is called a Moyed. It's not called a Chag. The Radak brings from none other than Reb Sadia Goin that Shmini Atzeres is called a Moyed. It's not called a Chag. Now, the Achronim have two questions on the Rama. Number one, the Gemara in Saita, that Shmini Atzeres is called a Chag, or like the Gemara says, Shmoina Yemei HaChag. So that's not such a strong question. You know why? Because that's a Gemara. But when it comes to Psukim, when it comes to Tefillah, Tefillah is not based on Gemara, Tefillah is based on Psukim. If you want to say a word in Chumash, in Tefillah, it has to be a word that is rooted in Psukim. It can't just be a word that's rooted in Gemara. So the fact that the Taz brings the Gemara in Saita that refers to Shmini Atzeres as a Chag, and the fact that the Gra brings a Gemara that the Shemini Yemei Chag, that doesn't mean the Psukim refer to it as a Chag. So there's another question though. There's another major question on the Rema, and that's found in Bikurei Yaakov. This morning in Shul we learned the Bikurei Yaakov, and here we have an amazing Bikurei Yaakov. The Bikurei Yaakov brings a raya that Shmini Atzeres is called a Chag in the Chumash. It says by Hakel, Bevoy Kol Yisrael Lirois Bechag Hasukais. Here, let's look over here. Shas is definitely saying good. Dihave kasav b'chag hasukos hava amina d'min Torah yachal lahamtin ad Shmini Atzeres. If would have said b'chag hasukos, I would have thought that midaraisa you could wait until Shmini Atzeres and read it without a bima, because a bima is not midaraisa. So, you see, the Taz really brought this raya. The Taz brought the raya that when the Torah says Chag HaSukkos, it could be, I would have thought it's referring to Shemini Atzeres. But he says, Aval be'emes belav hachi nirali lahavi raya the Shemini Atzeres kari Chag, from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, where the Gemara says, let's compare Chag HaSukkos, just like Chag HaSukkos is 8 days, so that means it's including Shmini Atzeres and Chag HaSukkos. Also, you're not over Baal Ta'achar until the whole Yom Tov passes, and that's referring to Shmini Atzeres, even though the Pasuk says Chag HaSukkos. And furthermore, another raya of Shmini Atzeres is called a Chag, is because the Gemara in Pesachim says, V'chagoisem oisei Chag Lashem Shivas Yamim B'Shana. The Gemara says, what do you mean Shivas Yamim? It's Shmoina. So the Gemara says, a raya, the Chagiga is only for 7 days, it's not Doicha Shabbos. But that means Shmini Atzeres is included in the Pasuk of V'chagoisem oisei Chag. Umizel anias daiti raya ulimta sheshmini atzeres ikri chag, like the Shulchan Aruch and not like the Rema. And then it says Berkei Yosef, I got a hold of the Sefer of the Chida, and he brought a raya in the name of the Simul Chadasha from this Gemara in Pesachim that says V'chagoisem oisei chag laShem shivas yamim. What do you mean? The Chagiga could be 8 days. No, it's a raya. The Chagiga is not Doicha Shabbos. That means when it says Shivas Yomim of Chag, it's referring to Shmini Atzeres. Because don't say it's talking about where Shmini Atzeres falls out on Shabbos, because then the first day is also Shabbos, and there are only 6 days. So from here, we have a raya that not only does the Gemara refer to Shmini Atzeres as a Chag, but the Pasuk, the Chagoisem Oisei Chag, is referring to Shmini Atzeres. And throughout the Chumash, whenever it talks about Chag HaSukkos, we always say it's referring to Shemini Atzeres as well. So that seems to be a kasha she'enol of tshuva on the Rama. Now, so the question is though, but the Yushalmi says explicitly that if somebody asers themselves on meat on the Chag, then if you go by Lashon Akra, you'd be mutter. What's the Yushalmi going to do with all these rayas? So, the Sefer Shalmei Toida gives the following answer. In other words, let's just set this up clearly. We learned to Yushalmi that says the Lashon HaTorah is that Shemini Atzeres is not called a Chag. The Rama substantiates that. He says V'loi matzinu b'shum makom she'Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. The fact that the Gemara brings Shmoina Yemei Chag in the Gemara, that's not such a strong kasha, because just because the Gemara calls it a Chag, it doesn't mean in the Lashon HaTorah we find it a Chag. The problem though is, like the Taz asks and the Bikurei Yaakov asks, that we always assume when the Torah says Chag HaSukkos, it's referring to Shemini Atzeres. So we see Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. Listen very carefully to the answer. The answer is Avada, the Taz and the Bikurei Yaakov are right. Chag HaSukkos refers to Shemini Atzeres, because when you talk about Sukkos, Shemini Atzeres is tafel to Sukkos. But we don't find anywhere that Shemini Atzeres by itself is called a Chag. There's no Chag Shemini Atzeres. It's only a Chag when it's part of Sukkos. When you talk about Shemini Atzeres as an 8th day of Sukkos, it's part of the Chag. But when you talk about it as a day by itself, you can't call it, nobody, even the Shulchan Aruch would agree, even the Taz would agree, you can't call it Chag Shemini HaAtzeres. It's B'yom Hashmini Chag HaAtzeres Hazeh. You hear this? The Shulchan Aruch says B'yom Hashmini Chag HaAtzeres Hazeh. But as a Chag, in other words, in order to defend the Rama, let's try to defend the Rama. In terms of the fact that the Gemara calls it Shmoina Simei Chag, that's the Gemara. But what about the fact that many psukim call it a Chag? Here's very important. The Rama would say, yes, granted, many psukim refer to Shemini Atzeres when it says Chag HaSukkos. That's because Shemini Atzeres is ancillary, it's secondary to Sukkos. So as part of Sukkos, it's also referred to as a Chag. When I say Chag, I can mean Shemini Atzeres. It's part of the greater Yom Tov of Sukkos. But as a Yom Tov by itself, we never find Shemini Atzeres is called a Chag. That's what the Rama would say. The Mechaber would say, still, it's as part. Here, the way the Taz articulates it is, he says, we're not, even the Taz who goes like the Mechaber, we're not going to say Chag Shemini Atzeres, because it's not a Chag Bifnei Atzmai. It's a Chag Machmas Sukkos. It's called the Atzeres Shel Chag. So the Taz would say, Es Yom Shemini HaAtzeres Chag Hazeh, which is different than the Mechaber. It's the Shemini HaAtzeres part of Chag. As opposed to the Mechaber said, Yom HaShmini Chag Atzeres. The Mechaber says you could call Chag Atzeres. The Taz says the Shemini Atzeres Chag. namely, Es Yom Shemini Ho Atzeres Chag. The Mechaber says no. Shemini Chag Ho Atzeres. What is the conclusion of the Mishnah Berurah? Let's see if we could see how the Mishnah Berurah concludes. Taf Reish Samach Ches. Ready for this? Taf Reish Samach Ches. The Mishnah Berurah's conclusion is that you say, Kama achronim hisigal zeh v'herbo barayis tishmiyat says mikri chag al kenein limtois v'ma shekasav ha'mechaber. Even though the Mishnah Berurah brings down the Taz and the Shar Tzion, and the Taz says a little bit differently. He says we don't say Siyoim Shemini Chag Atzeres. He says Shemini Atzeres Chag. But Lamaisa, the Mishnah Berurah says we go like the Mechaber, not like the Rema. But the answer to the Rema, when he says Lo Matzinu b'Shum Makom, is number one. Shum Makom means in Chumash, and that's a very important rule. The rule is the words of Tefillah are found in Tanakh. So the fact that you find in the Gemara that it refers to Shemini Atzeres as a Chag, that's not going to help you. And yes, it's called a Chag as part of Sukkos, but the Rama would say it's not a Chag by itself. And the Shulchan Aruch and the Taz would say no. Okay, so it's the Shemini Atzeres part of Chag. So therefore the word Chag could be used. Okay, Rabbi Isai, in terms of the scheduling, right now, at 12:46, it's not set in stone. We do tonight Daf Nun Amud Aleph, the beautiful Sugya of Rabbi Akiva. After all, Rabbi Akiva is one of the Tanoim who has a shita about what the sukkah was. And then Daf Nun Amud Beis, let's call it for Wednesday night after Yom Tov. I think that's what we'll do. Okay? Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining. Kol Tov.
Is the regel considered a chag? I mean, Shemini Atzeres is known as regel b'fnei atzmo.
Right. Is regel a chag? It seems like these are different terms. Like Reb Sadia Goin said, it's a moyed. But right, there's moyed, there's regel, there's chag.
But with all this discussion, I mean, a chag should have criteria of what defines a chag, right? It's not only lashon of the Torah. It should also be whether you're allowed to do malacha, whether there are certain mitzvahs involved. So Shemini Atzeres is similar to Sukkos in terms of you can't do malachas.
I would say that we only had a discussion whether it's called a chag. We never discussed is it called a regel. But the Gemara says, Shemini Atzeres regel b'fnei atzmai, right? So that means it is called a regel, at least in the Gemara. Furthermore, the Mekubalim say, the shalosh regalim hold up the kisei hakavod, but a chair needs 4 regalim, and Shemini Atzeres is the 4th regel. It's Keneged David. So Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos, and Shemini Atzeres is the regel of David. So we never had a discussion whether it's called a regel. Regel l'chayra means whether you have to be also oilei regel. Chag. You know, it says shalosh pa'amim tachai gli bashana. Now that doesn't necessarily discount Shemini Atzeres because you're already there.
I was also going to say that on Daf page, Rabbi Yehuda didn't. He said he didn't drink wine. He always drank wine, Kiddush, Havdalah, and Arba Kaisos, but he didn't mention the wine of Chag.
Oh, good point. Good point. Lamaisa, on Yom Tif, there is a chiyuv to drink yayin, right? But if you don't like it, then you don't have to do it. So maybe he was exempt then. But that's a very.
And what about basar? If somebody doesn't enjoy meat.
How can you not enjoy milk? You know.
For the nashim.
The nashim. So the poskim say yayin is a chiyuv da'iraisa, basar is a mitzvah da'iraisa, but not a chiyuv. Let's say you don't enjoy it. It's only given l'simcha. If you dislike it, you don't have to.
Shkoyach.
Have a good day.
Recording stopped.
Have a good day, Rabbi Ari.